Hello again, and welcome to a financial thought leadership podcast, Banking on Experience, sponsored by CRMNEXT, the banking CRM, where we simplify work, drive growth, and deliver on experience. This podcast is meant to empower individuals working in the financial industry with stories, experiences, and knowledge straight from the source. Please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, and stay tuned for an awesome show. Welcome to another episode of Banking on Experience. James Gilbert here. You all know me. I am joined today by Ben Herring, who happens to be the Director of Engagement at Minnesota Credit Union Network. He's also a previous I3 participant. Ben, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, James. Really looking forward to having this conversation. Obviously, as a leader in this space, I'm really honored to be on this show with you and to join the number of other experts that you've had on. So thanks for having me.
Today, we're going to be talking about empowering more effective collaboration. You're very passionate about this. I'm very passionate about this. And I think we want to see more credit unions working together. So we're going to try and bring that to the light of the surface of this topic as well. But before we do, let's get to know you on a little bit of a personal level real quick. Who is your idol or your hero?
You know, I should have a boilerplate for this, but it changes in the context. I would say, I think I would normally answer something like a Duke Ellington. For those of you who either don't know or that name rings a bell, but you're not placing it, Duke Ellington is a jazz icon and was innovative in music. And Duke is one of those people that I continually look to for inspiration and for guidance.
What instrument do you play?
I like to say I could probably convince you that I play a number of instruments, but I know in my heart that I can play a pretty good jazz trumpet. But other than that, I do own a guitar and several versions of keyboards and some other instruments that are laying around.
I play a little piano, and so but I don't play anything else.
Piano's a tough one. That is, I wish I was much better at the piano than I am. So I am envious of your skills there.
Well, one day I'll tell the story of how I learned how to play the piano on another time, but it was very interesting, that's for sure. I can't read music at all. Like, I have no idea what those notes mean.
Yeah, I am much more of a play-by-ear musician myself as well. So
yeah, I love it. So my other question for you is, what is your favorite thing to do outside of work?
Favorite thing to do outside of work, especially lately, has been painting. Over the past 15, 16 months now, during the pandemic, I kind of rediscovered my passion for visual arts. I repicked up my painting utensils, if you will, my brushes and my paints, and found a passion that I had kind of set aside. And yesterday, just installed several pieces in a new restaurant here in Minneapolis.
No way.
Yeah. So it's been a crazy experience, trying to find the silver linings throughout the past, over a year now. Has been, they've been few and far between, but really trying to focus my energy on things that I'm really passionate about. Credit unions are one of them. And it turns out that visual art is also another one of those things.
Well, I appreciate you sharing some of those nuggets of your personal side. I want to get now into more of the business side a little bit. So talk to us about, why are you so passionate about this topic of collaboration, and how do you kind of define collaboration within the credit union space?
Sure. And how much time do we have? No, I'll give you a really quick snippet of my credit union story. And it originates in banks. So I used to work for a for-profit banking institution and found my way over to credit unions based on a draw of mine, which was kind of this gravitation to what the credit union movement is all about. Right, or people helping people, and that really resonated with me. And so I found employment after the bank. I actually actively sought out credit unions. Worked for a credit union here based in St. Paul, but I worked at a Minneapolis branch, Affinity Plus Federal Credit Union, and grew in that space for 6 years. Was in a branch, and then I moved over to and helped relaunch their business development groups. I was out in the community and chatting with our SEGs and really getting to learn and live the credit union way. In that time, I also had the fortune of what you mentioned earlier, which was I was accepted into the I3 program through Filene. And from there, I really got to get a good taste for what collaboration among credit unions could really be, and what that could look like, what that could feel like, and how we might actually go about doing it. So that obviously lends a little bit to my passion. Now I'm at the league here in Minnesota. The Minnesota Credit Union Network is technically an outcome of credit union collaboration, right? It's credit unions coming together and realizing that we're stronger together. And as a result, we should have a structure in place to allow for collaboration more easily. And being in the league, I've had such an incredible opportunity to not only learn about credit unions as a whole, the system, how we all work together, and some areas in which we could do better. And I've also gotten a chance to really learn more about individual credit unions as a result. I was at a large credit union, and the differences between a place like Affinity Plus and some of our smallest credit unions it's quite the expanse, right? That spectrum of differences. And so we all have challenges, and they might be different. However, I think there's a lot of overlap and ways in which collaboration can actually facilitate solving for both problems, problems from not only large institution standpoint, but also the smaller credit union standpoint.
I mean, one of the things that I think that gets missed a lot in collaboration is people think like, oh, well, how do we better communicate and better collaborate internally with different functions and ensure that there's streamlined process. But, what you're referring to, especially with your experience, is like how entire organizations can actually collaborate with each other. What do you think the risk is of not collaborating?
That is a touchy subject for me, only because I think that credit unions have done such a fantastic job of epitomizing collaboration. But just like anything else, we can do more, we can do better. Certainly, there are a number of potential risks and things that we've been seeing, right? The number of credit unions that are existent today is fewer than there were likely even potentially yesterday, right? That number is going down. More pertinently and more importantly, I think, is our share of the market, right? Credit unions have, I believe, through 2020, 7.8% of market share as it pertains to our total assets, compared to, over 92% from the for-profit banking sector. And we have a lot of work there. I think collaboration really is going to be a critical key component to our success and our growth in that space. And so the risk there is obviously growth. It's that potential for or inability to keep up with the large banks that have, basically everything that they could ever want or need at their disposal, right? Are we going to exist? Are we going to continue to be able to serve our members? I hate to say that, but when it comes to our opportunity here, it could mean the difference between being here and potentially not.
Ben, when it comes to the Credit Union League, one thing that I find really interesting is trying to address the elephant in the room when it comes to like competing with the bigger banks, right? Like to your point, if credit unions only own a fraction of the market share there, one of the pain points for me as a member at a current credit union has been some of the things that should just be natural and just like what I expect from a financial institution, I can't do. Like things like Zelle payments, right? Things like Venmo, things like being able to connect my bank account with Robinhood to do like day trading, things like that. I think naturally, as we as people want to see that expectation, but you as a leader in the credit union league, how do you address some of those issues? How do you address, like, if you know that there's a smaller credit union or even a bigger credit union that isn't addressing that, how do you go about that and collaborating on a solution?
When I see that there's an opportunity to evolve or grow or better in something that a credit union's either offering now, and it could be something different or more or better for their credit union members, and or if there's an opportunity likewise kind of maybe in reverse. There's oftentimes credit unions that are doing incredible things that I think could or should be shared that is really what leagues exist to do. We are a connection point to identify and to showcase what it is that credit unions are doing that is exemplary and or just extraordinary, and then making that connection with the broader industry. And again, the reverse of that is when we see maybe a credit union struggling, that's really where leagues can play a pivotal role for institutions that are our members, which is we can help. We can provide the connection to people and resources, possibly, products and services. We are that centralized hub. We exist and are obviously created by credit unions, for credit unions. And as a result, we're here for our members. We're here for credit unions, just as you are, as credit unions here for your members, as are we. And so definitely look to your leagues if and when you ever have questions there, but also just know that the leagues are looking out for your best interests as well. I'll just point out just a couple examples of things that I think are incredible examples of collaboration in Minnesota. Obviously, that's something I'm close to in my role. So being engagement, a lot of how I actually describe what it is I do is actually under the umbrella of collaboration, because engagement with credit unions doesn't mean I'm going to have one credit union doing one thing and then another credit union doing another thing separately, right? It's all coming together. It's education for all of us. It's products and programs for all of us together. And we want as many of our credit unions to join in on that as possible. See You Forward Day is a fantastic example of a way that credit unions have been coming together to collaborate around the idea of simply spreading kindness. Mm-hmm. It is an opportunity from the networks side of things to highlight our story, to show our difference, really uplift our impact to our communities and for our communities. As a result, it's also just good messaging and marketing, right? This is what it means to be a part of a credit union. And this is what collaboration looks like or could look like. We're really excited because that particular concept is growing. 2 years ago, Illinois launched their Kindness Day initiative, See You Kind. And we're now seeing other credit unions and other states looking at this concept as a way to bring their organizations together under something that we just naturally do, right? We're constantly, there's not a day that goes by that I don't see something incredible that a credit union's done for someone in their community, right? Let's just pull that all together and show case to everyone that this is what credit unions do. This is what we do. Another one, kind of more on the product and business side of things is, I should say, PrizeLink Savings. So I help run our state's version of PrizeLink Savings. It's called Wincentive, and it's a savings account. Really cool about it is when members deposit into their Wincentive account, they get an eligible entry into a drawing for each $25 into their own savings account, and they could potentially win upwards of $5,000. It's literally a lottery for saving your own money. And it's something that came out of credit unions saying, we want to offer this, but it's going to be so much more impactful if we do so together than if we do so separately. And now we just celebrated in Minnesota, we just celebrated $10 million saved in Wincentive accounts throughout our state. Really, really cool milestone for us to hit. And again, you look at who's offering these accounts, credit unions. Credit unions are by far and away leading PrizeLink Savings, and it's a differentiator. It's something that no other financial institutions are really, really doing or are doing well. Credit unions are doing it really well. And as a result, what other account or product or service can you think of that financial institutions are offering that you get to celebrate just by giving them, like literally just giving them money? That's all you do. And it's just such a cool and fun way to showcase what we can do together.
I'm always fascinated by how credit union leagues are created. Every story is different and every league is different. And I know that there's some credit unions out there that, for example, they don't have a league that's in their region that helps serve their where they're at. What would be your suggestion in how those credit unions get involved with other leagues that could potentially be somewhat close but don't necessarily serve their direct region? Or how could they go about creating a league?
I love that question. And I think I'm certainly not the expert to ask about how do you create a league. Obviously, I'm a bit newer to leagues, and I'm excited to be, one of the younger folks at our organization, and to see some of the younger folks joining and or seeing the value of being a part of the league system in our space. What I can say about that is looking out to your region, right? If you're not seeing that there's this network of credit unions coming together to collaborate, finding and or potentially even being an open source of collaboration and openly sharing what it is that you're wanting and or willing to do in that work. And so if it's, proactively reaching out to area leagues, I would also highly suggest connecting with CUNA, which is, obviously the national version of leagues. And so there are so many passionate people who work for CUNA. Consider their resources always. If you're not a member of CUNA, definitely ask your leadership about that, especially if you're looking to collaborate with other credit unions. What I've found is oftentimes leagues provide that unbiased third-party perspective and support that is critical to launching programming and or facilitating conversations, really just creating an environment that's conducive for collaboration, for cooperation, for innovation. And if you do have any questions about, how might we collaborate more and or better, please do reach out to me. I definitely don't know how to create a league, but I want to find out how. I would love to figure that out. I'm actually in the middle of working with a number of individuals at other credit union leagues and other credit unions and within our space to figure out how do we more easily create credit unions. So it's definitely in that realm of, creation, this idea of new, evolving what it is that we do today to bring us into the future. So top of mind for me, and I'd love to learn as a result of something like that.
We're trying to talk about like specifically collaboration amongst other credit unions. And it's interesting because I think that some credit unions don't have a way to get into a league, right? And that's where I'm like, well, I mean, what if that was the answer? I know, and especially as a vendor, like we're a vendor of credit unions, we help serve credit unions. But I think one of the things that I'm curious about too is like we help serve credit unions as a vendor. And I think one of the other areas that I think credit unions naturally get together, and this happens all the time when we're trying to put our product in front of a credit union, they oftentimes want a referral. And so we get them in touch with people that are using the product so that they can validate the technology that others are using to see how it compares. It might not always compare apples to apples, but I know that that's another really great way to collaborate with some of these leagues.
Yeah, that's a big part of what we do as a league is go through due diligence with potential new vendors and or existing vendors that are looking to grow in their service to credit unions. We're constantly looking at, how our partners are doing with regard to serving our credit unions. And you might see from your league, certainly in Minnesota as well, we're talking about vendors in our space almost constantly. They support a lot of what we do in Minnesota, not only sponsoring our events and programming, but also, helping into making contributions for some of the credit union specific fundraisers. And most importantly, what they do is provide reasonable services, providing credit unions the opportunity to better serve their members. And obviously without vendors, we just wouldn't be able to do that. It's interesting because, I think actually, oddly enough, Wincentive is a really good example of how we've collaborated, not only as and existed as a third party, we've actually, as the network, we actually created an entity that is a subsidiary of ours, TrueLink, which is actually a business that facilitates PrizeLink savings programs, not only for Minnesota, but for a number of leagues nationally and credit unions throughout the US. So that is an example of collaboration. But also, when we go to set up PrizeLink savings, oftentimes what ends up happening is we connect credit unions with other credit unions who are on the same core platform because they need to create data exports and understand potential for mitigating costs and all that kind of stuff. But what I think is really cool about that is the willingness to share. That's time out of someone else's day when they didn't necessarily have to do that. And it's another credit union that if they saw them as a competitor, they might not be willing to share. But oftentimes it's something where it is actually a gap and or a challenge sometimes. But our willingness to let go of the potential that we might be in some small way, and we being credit unions might be competing with one another, if we can mitigate that or lessen that feeling, the more opportunity we're going to have to move more quickly, efficiently, and ultimately grow in our space. The sooner we let go of each other being competitors and rely more heavily on one another, just the better. We've seen incredible examples of credit unions, not looking at each other as competitors, but I think we need to continue to evaluate that. And it's hard, it's hard not to see another credit union, especially one that's, geographically close to you as a competitor, but really there are much bigger competitors in these spaces that we need to worry about, I think.
No doubt, especially when you talked about at the beginning of the podcast, the market share that credit unions have versus the rest, right? So, Ben, we're at time. Where can people reach you to talk more about this topic of collaboration within a league?
Certainly reach out via email. Follow me on Twitter, LinkedIn, connect with me. Definitely feel free to share my contact information, James, or simply look up Minnesota Credit Union Network, and I should be there somewhere, I'm sure.
Thanks so much for joining the show today, Ben. We appreciate it.